Right.
Well, hello. I want to send you my best regards to you. And before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank you for the invitation. My name is Omar Herrera. I'm an economist specialized in sustainable development and public policies affairs. And this is a great opportunity for me to, I'm thrilled to be here with you in this very important forum. For me, it's a privilege to speak with students like you from so many different places in the world. It's a great opportunity to provide a global perspective. Mhm. It has been impossible for me to be there with you live due to previous agenda items that I already had. I hope this talk, the content of this talk is interesting to you and useful for your professional application in your respective countries, especially as students of development issues that you are. Um, let's talk about a little bit about how we're going to divide today's talk. In the first topic, I want to contribute with my point of view or to increase our understanding of why statistical capacity is so vital to achieve development goals. In the second moment, we will analyze the conceptual framework for statistical capacity. And here we'll delve into the key components that make up a strong statistical capacity so that we can understand what is needed to build and maintain effective statistical system. In a third part, we'll discuss the reality of a data-rich world, how we have transformed into a society that lives in an era in which more data is generated than ever, thanks to digital revolution, basically, and how this abundance of data brings opportunities, but also brings challenges. And next we'll address a critical question: are we effectively monitoring our development indicators? Um, let's talk in this part about the current level of capabilities and gaps in tracking progress on the Sustainable Development Goals and other key country level metrics. In the fifth section, we will discuss how understanding a statistical capacity requires us to delve deeper into national statistical systems. We cannot talk about creating and strengthening statistical capacity without addressing the basic infrastructure of national statistical systems. And finally, I'll share with you some personal reflections and thoughts on what I consider should be the most relevant aspects at a country level, at a sectorial level, at a institutional level, and even at an individual level to contribute to the strengthening of a statistical capacity in our countries. So imagine this, all of us here, especially you, master's students focused on development, know how crucial statisticals are for managing development and shaping public policies. That's something I don't have to explain that much to you. You can imagine how statistics connect directly to a country's overall capacities. Okay? We talk about national development capacities in general. I'll say is countries' ability to plan, implement, monitor, and evaluate policies and programs that drive the achievement of sustainable development. Having strong national development capacities is essential for many aspiration, for any aspiration toward implementation of the 2030 agenda, for example, especially the aim of leaving no one behind. We strive for social cohesion and environmental harmony sustainable over time. An ecosystem of disaggregated data is vital to achieve these goals because it ensures that public policies addresses the needs of all population segments, and especially the vulnerable. This requires data broken down by gender, age, religion, ethnicity, citizenship, you name the disaggregation, race, geography, disability, income level. And such detailed data helps policymakers identify and tackle existing inequalities. And, and a robust statistical capacity provide the foundation for effective public policies. And the connection is clear. You can see it, right? Strong statistical capacities support effective public policy implementation and development outcomes. They are also critical for enacting reforms and transforming the social phenomena and create long-term positive impacts, on people's quality of life. When we look at data management as a value chain, we know it starts with production, involving key aspects of that production, identifying needs, collecting data through surveys, census, administrative records, and then processing to ensure quality and coherence. And this is where national statistical systems are vital, ensuring that data is accurate and representative. And then come other phases like publication, where transparency is crucial. Then use and reuse phases that help us connect the producers with users, providing them with incentives to ensure the data performs and inform decisions and create social changes. And the good management of this chain is essential for effective governance. So it's important for us to stop and think about, and stop for a second and ask ourselves, what are we talking about when we talk about statistical capacity? What do we mean? Do we mean something specific? There are many ways to gauge the state's statistical strengths. In general, I would say a country has robust statistical capacities when it can effectively and efficiently collect, process, analyze, and disseminate statistical data. I like to use the World Bank's Statistical Performance Index as a reference. It's composed by what they call 5 pillars. First of all, is data use. And sorry, this data use refers to a country's ability to integrate and apply data in decision making. This involves policymakers, organizations, and the public interpreting and using statistical information effectively. Then you have data services, which are platforms, systems that provide access to statistical data, public websites, portals, databases, as well as something very particular that is personalized services that deliver specific data to those who need it. Statistical products refer to tangible outcomes that statistical from statistical activities such as census, surveys, administrative records, and reports. The quality of these products depends on the accuracy, coverage, and frequency. Data sources are where statistical information originates, including traditional sources and other non-traditional sources like big data, citizen-generated data. And for me, the most important data infrastructure that involves those systems, standards, and policies that enable data collection, storage, processing, and dissemination. And a solid data infrastructure ensures that an efficient and secure data management is happening. Later in the presentation, we will see that it's crucial for the proper functioning of statistical systems to have an adequate data infrastructure. So everything said so far makes us quickly see why there is such a close correlation, such a high correlation between this capacity to manage data and the development levels of the countries. If we look at a global behavioral patterns of how countries perform statistically, it can clearly be found that high-income countries are the ones that present the best results. And the opposite is also true. Lower levels of development are associated with worse outcomes. And that's not chance. That's not coincidence, I think. It's easy to imagine that now uh, how there's a virtuous circle between good development results and a better level of statistical capacity. And if we think about it, it makes sense. Better public policies are generated that promote sustainable development and then increase the chance for better investment results. And systems are strengthened. Then, in the long run, make governments more effective. Where is the virtuous circle? Well, these end results are the one that, in the long run, improve the conditions and probabilities to create and sustain better statistical systems over time. Uh, and if we reflect on something very important, we've witnessed fascinating phenomenon over the past few decades as the surge of, yeah, in a global level of data flow. The transformation has not only fueled the growth of services and trade, but also have changed the way we live, and work. The digital transformation and global connectivity have driven and this increase in data flow worldwide within uh, not only within countries but between countries. And with this rise of the internet, mobile devices, and information and communication technologies, the amount of data generated, exchanged, not only generated, exchanged and used daily has skyrocketed. And this has led to the emerge of a data economy, which has become we could say a cornerstone of modern commerce, right? And companies in the private sector area, companies use data to optimize their business, but at the same time, governments are transforming their operations over decades and creating mechanisms to adapt and make better use of this data. Of course, this phenomenon also brings challenges, especially in the public sector. If you see here, let's use this example. Let's use an example of some basic statistics from censuses and administrative records that are key for public sectors and for public services. They have been improving in coverage and quality with time. For instance, the population census have been around for nearly 200 years. It took over a century to count more than 50% of the population. And today, a five omission level is considered poor. Imagine the progress that represents. And so we can, uh, if you think about that progress, why in this modern society we still face significant challenges in our statistical system? What happens is that, uh, well, I think is the ambitious global efforts like Millennium Development Goals or Sustainable Development Goals now have put unprecedented pressure on national and international statistical systems. These goals not only increased the data required, but also the level of detail and accuracy needed. Consequently, statistical system have had too quick of a time trying to adopt new technologies, new methodologies to manage and analyze data more efficiently and accurately than ever before. Uh, but um, but also we should highlight that an often overlooked aspect of 2030 agenda is that emphasis on statistical capacities. The SDGs recognize that without precise and timely data, we can't measure progress or make informed decisions. That this is on and this only means that countries should strengthen their national statistical systems. There's no other way to interpret that. And so is then worth asking ourselves today in the middle of 2024, 9 years after establishing this priority, how are we doing? how well are we managing the data? How well are we monitoring the progress? Uh, how much our decisions are made based on this data? Let's see. Let's analyze this for a second. This image is extracted from SDG data portal. It shows the global performance level of sustainable development goals indicators for countries with available data for at least 2 years since 2015. It could be more than 2 years, but at least 2 years of registrations since 2015. Each SDG is represented by a column with multiple rows. Each row it corresponds to a specific indicator. The colors indicate the percentage of countries with available data in each indicator. Okay, so the red ones are low data availability. Less than 25% of the countries have at least two years of data. Orange is 25 to 50% of the country moderate data availability. Yellow is 50 to 75% of the countries, that's higher data availability. And green means that 75 to 100% of the countries have at least 2 years with data since 2015. Okay, could be more, but only at least 2 data. Very high data availability. The large amount of red and orange present in this graph is striking. Is the vast majority of data that is experiencing low frequency worldwide. In this other image showing the overall availability of disaggregated data by country for each SDG indicator since 2015, in this graphic, the colors indicate the proportion of countries that have disaggregated data available for each indicator. So green means that more than a third of countries have disaggregated data available, any disaggregation. Yellow means less than a third of countries have disaggregated data available. Gray means no disaggregated data available at all. And white that means no disaggregation possible. So the indicator is not possible to disaggregate. You can see about the availability, many indicators have low availability of disaggregated data. And there's also an uneven coverage of disaggregation, indicating that certain SDGs and their respective indicators are significantly less monitored than others. This disparity, you can think that this disparity can lead to unequal attention and allocation of resources for different objectives. There are even some critical sectors that show an alarming lack of disaggregation. For example, indicators related to access to basic services and infrastructure, or SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, have particularly low coverage. And much of this lack of disaggregated data in many indicators implies you can imply that the situation of the vulnerable groups, such as women, children, people with disabilities, ethnic minorities, are not being adequately captured. Without this data, it is very difficult to design plus inclusive policies and not leaving no one behind. And even sectors like health and education that usually present better data availability, data collection and disaggregation is not complete. And well, I don't have to tell you how dangerous this scenario is for the design, implementation, and evaluation of public policies. The lack of disaggregated data limits the ability of governments and organizations to make informed, evidence-based decisions. Okay, and something that is very intuitive. This becomes worse when we add layers. Here, we see the availability by more than one type of disaggregation of the SDG globally. And specifically, when we disaggregate by sex and age, you can count on fingers the indicators that are green. And in these indicators alone, more than a third of the countries can measure with both disaggregation at the same time. A very similar fate if we want to disaggregate territorially. So how is it possible to be like this? How, after approving such an ambitious agenda, having made so much progress, dimensioning development, as well as with the advantage of globalization, digitalization, growth of government statistical operations, and progress of the information systems and statistics, because don't get me wrong, progress has been made, but how, after all that, the available and timely data are not produced at the same time, at the same pace as the information needs to flow to for the monitoring and evaluation. Those are questions that are a very complex question, which do not have easy answers. And let let's try. I try to contribute with some reflections and thoughts on my own. Um, in 2021, World Bank's development reports addresses the data system to support development processes, and they say each of the actors in the system must play their role, and there and for these to happen, there must be a system that articulates them. But for a system to be articulated, its governance must be well established. To achieve this, as the report addresses, it will be necessary to strengthen legal systems, and governance in general, uh, so that the instruments are there to establish, facilitate, and enforce such as social contracts. Excuse me. And these challenges are greater for low income countries, which are often at a disadvantage as they lack the infrastructure and skill necessary for the most cases. Let's take a look at this graph from the World Bank's Global Data Regulation Survey. It shows that the legal and the regulatory framework for data governance varies by country level income level. High income in countries perform better in most areas. It is also the least developed countries that have the most difficult in adhering to international methodologies. And that's not always a bad thing, as long as there's a national standard for the measurement question. It's not the same not adhering to a poverty measure because you have your own measure, or not adhering to to a global indicator because you don't have the inputs of the indicator. But when the difficult is due to a lack of institutional basis for measuring the indicator or calculating the variable, it reflects low statistical capacity. If you look how countries are financing their statistical system, the World Bank measured that most countries do not fully fund their national system, the statistical plans, and registering a big disparity. High-income countries are the most compliant with this financing, reaching 93%, while more than half. You can see more than half of low-income countries are unable to fully finance their plans. If you see Latin America and the Caribbean, only 50% of the statistical plans in 2021 was fully budgeted with financing. This graph, elaborated by the World Bank, shows that countries with older statistical laws have lower statistical performance and data openness, for example. As these laws age, both the statistical performance index and data openness index or scores decrease. And by the way, for countries, there's still there are socioeconomic barriers, structural barriers that become challenges to properly implement statistical systems. There are still important gaps in the use of technology in low and middle income countries, and this is essential element for the participation in the data society. So, what to do? What should be done at this juncture? It's imperative to acknowledge that Addressing these challenges requires country to develop a what I call a comprehensive capacity building strategies at a broad level, while also being assertive in integrating statistical components as a transversal dimension of their development systems. We must develop robust statistical governance frameworks that align with our broader development goals. What I mean about that, what I mean with that is that doing so, we can ensure that our statistical systems are not only responsive, first of all, it's going to be responsive to current needs, but also resilient and adaptable to future demands. It is through the systemic governance of data and the integration of statistical components across all levels of development that we will be able to meet these challenges head on. And specifically for the public sector to implement a national data system, it makes sense to follow the recommendations made in 2021 by the World Bank study and see it as a sequence of steps divided into three main phases. First of all, laying the foundation, high-level strategic policies that recognize the importance of an integrated national data systems are essential for countries, including legal framework, strengthen human capital, and strengthening the National Statistical Office more than ever. Initiating data flows is the second phase, establishing mechanisms to work in a multi-stakeholder environment, creating those spaces. And third, optimizing the systems, which is evaluating and adjusting over time the strategy, creating institutional incentives so that everyone plays their role within the system. And if it's necessary to make an adjustment, they are made to the same working instruments. Government leadership here is crucial in implementing these strategies, and systems to ensure sustainable, high quality, and responsive statistical frameworks should be their goal. We have learned so many things, I think, as a planet. In the last century, we've had a big leap in statistical learnings. We've learned to identify priorities, assign indicators to complex issues, bring indicators to the forefront of the discussion. We have strived to speak with evidence more than ever. We've institutionalized monitoring. Monitoring is a legacy from the Millennium Development Goals to the SDGs. We created our own goals for statistical purpose, and most important, or one of the most important things, is that we have highlighted statistical limitations. In this process of creating and implementing SDGs, the SDGs, countries have received significant benefits by harnessing the collective efforts of extensive international collaboration. Over 30 custodians and hundreds of statistical experts around the world have contributed to the development and to the development indicators and the refinement of it. This results in a new conceptual frameworks and methodologies that serve as guides and working spaces for the national statistic systems of the countries. This is a comprehensive approach and allows countries to leverage global expertise and best practice, facilitating effective monitoring and achievement of SDGs. But I should say that badly used, it can turn into a trap in which the national capacities could be hurt. Why? Well, because if you don't have the proper national leadership, you can end up converting this potential synergy of dozens of custodians, organizations of the indicators, that instead of contributing to the integration of the system, the statistical system, could be otherwise pushing it to the not wanted decomposition and anatomization. Each one of these organizations burdening institutions with their own measurements needs according to their own particular interests. And the risk is that we can fall into a portal, and countries have been following into a portal development monitoring systems, mobilizing national resources and efforts towards the SDGs indicators, and sometimes neglecting the construction of national systems. And an environment could be created in which the leading sector institutions have to interact directly with the custodians organization of the SDG indicators, even if it means to bypass sometimes the NSOs, so that so that it could be quicker, quote unquote, quicker to reach the source of data, which pressure them to produce data and create what I call is an unsustainable capacity for collecting indicators for global purpose. And this is fictitious. The situation contributes to the atomization of data and the duplication of efforts, leaving national statistical systems in agony. So this is how countries see themselves in a reality of not being able to effectively integrate and take full advantage of the global statistical boost generated by the SDGs, creating real institutional learning. And most of all, approaching my last point, I should say, the aforementioned risk prevent the statistical system from being transformed. This is the most important, an integral subsystem of, say, planning and management. Planning systems are, in my opinion, the only one capable of giving direction to the statistical value chain that we have described before. When we previously discussed the intersectionality of the data value chain, we were specifically referring to how this process can integrate countries' development strategies. This includes a transversal component of strengthening statistical capacities. It involves processing and provision of information to monitoring and evaluation, which is crucial to having substantial amount of data. In this way, no policy, and this is the part that is very important, that no policy approach or planning instrument should lack the corresponding measurement capacity part. For example, if the development strategy of a country and its axes are going to be strategically addressed through its different sectors, the statistical aspect cannot be left aside. The institution, when they think about their work, should always think about their role in the strengthening of the national capacity and should plan and budget for it. This must be mandatory. They must be as responsible for the public policy as they are for the statistical operation that supports the indicators that compose the public policy. And examples are endless. And there's no health public policy without the disease registries. There's no education policy without school enrollments, dropout rates. Employment policies should incorporate worker records. Agricultural development should incorporate a lot of administrative records, like records of crops, cultivated lands, etc. And the examples are a lot of examples we can bring here. And here comes my message. Here comes my message to all of you that in the near future are going to be in charge in your respective countries of the design, implementation, analysis, and evaluation of public policies. Some of you I've known that have interest in a very important topic like urban development, public transportation, infrastructure, international trade, telecommunications, etc. If I would like to leave you with a main message, is that this type of records that I mentioned must be all a strategic part of the work that the public institution that govern and intervene these sectors should apply. when making their sectorial and institutional plans, the national systems must force them to foresee and therefore budget their respective statistical components and thereby comply with the statistical plans of the country, which is nothing more than achieving statistical development objectives that satisfy the demand that carries out the same planning system throughout its respective instruments. You see the circularity that is implied, pursuing strengthening of NSOs and building systems. A mistake is to think that statistical systems are strengthen themselves specifically, separately, encouraging and financing NSOs, and not by establishing incentives within the other systems that intersect the national statistical system. And that's in that sense, planning, budgeting, and other systems must contain statistics as transversal, as a transversal X, that so that national statistical systems are nothing more than an articulator governing the component within the other systems. So tomorrow, wherever you are and in whatever context you find yourself, ask yourself the following question: am I, with my actions and the initiative that I support, contributing to the principles on which the governance and statistics systems should be strengthened, and thereby contributing to the achievement of development objectives? Or am I, with my action or lack of, contributing more to the suffering from any other risks mentioned above? I leave you with that. Well, once again, thanks to the organizers of this forum, everyone who has been involved in the organization of the panels, and especially Maria Jose del Riego for the invitation. On the next occasion, I hope to be able to accompany you live and direct. I would love to keep in touch with you. I'll leave you my reference there, and I hope that I'll be able to chat and discuss about this or any other topic that interests us, since I wasn't able to be there with you. I hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. See you soon.